The plasma fire scorched the air above Commander Zara's head as she ducked behind the crumbling defensive barrier. The acrid smell of melted metal and burned flesh filled her nostrils, a constant reminder of how badly this war was going. Around her, the remnants of the Galactic Defense Coalition forces huddled in whatever cover they could find, their once pristine uniforms now torn and stained with the blood of fallen comrades. The Kethvar had been relentless in their assault on Nexus Prime, the Coalition's most important strategic stronghold. For 3 standard months, the insectoid invaders had pounded the planet's defenses with their bioships and swarm tactics. What had started as a confident defense by the Coalition's finest troops had devolved into a desperate last stand. Zara pressed her back against the twisted metal barrier and checked her weapon's power cell. 20% remaining. Around her position, she could hear the labored breathing of her soldiers, the quiet sobs of the wounded, and the distant chittering of the approaching Kethvar forces. The sound always made her skin crawl. Thousands of mandibles clicking in unison, creating a symphony of death that had haunted her nightmares for weeks. Commander, Sergeant Vextar, a blue-skinned Aldorian, scrambled over to her position. His usually calm demeanor had cracked days ago, and now panic flickered in his large, silver eyes. The eastern perimeter has fallen. The Kethvar are breaking through the plasma shields. We've lost contact with Beta Company entirely. Zara closed her eyes for a moment, fighting back the wave of despair that threatened to overwhelm her. Beta Company had been their strongest unit, comprising nearly 200 seasoned veterans from 5 different worlds. If they had fallen, it meant the Kethvar had broken through their most fortified position. What about reinforcements from the orbital stations? She asked, though she already suspected the answer. Vextar's silence spoke volumes. Finally, he shook his head. The last transmission came 6 hours ago. Admiral Corvani's fleet is scattered across 3 systems, fighting their own battles. We're on our own, Commander. The ground beneath them trembled as another Kethvar bioship fired its massive organic cannons at the Coalition's remaining defensive structures. The alien vessels were grotesque things, living creatures the size of star destroyers, bred specifically for warfare. Their hull plating was composed of hardened chitin that could deflect most energy weapons, and their internal systems were biological rather than mechanical, making them nearly impossible to disable with conventional tactics. From her vantage point atop the defense platform, Zara could see the full scope of the battlefield. Nexus Prime's capital city, once a gleaming metropolis of crystal spires and floating gardens, now lay in ruins. Smoke billowed from countless fires, and the proud towers that had reached toward the stars for centuries had been reduced to broken stumps. The Kethvar bioships hovered over the destruction like massive vultures, their tentacled appendages occasionally reaching down to harvest resources or capture survivors. How many do we have left? Zara asked, dreading the answer. Vextar consulted his tactical display, the holographic projection flickering with static from electromagnetic interference. Approximately 800 combat-effective personnel across all units, maybe another 200 wounded who could still fight if absolutely necessary. 800. Zara remembered when they had started this defense with over 15,000 coalition troops, representing the military might of dozens of worlds. The Kethvar had systematically worn them down through sheer numbers and biological warfare that their medical teams had struggled to counter. The enemy's strategy was as effective as it was horrifying. The Kethvar didn't just kill, they converted. Their bioweapons could transform fallen soldiers into slave drones, adding them to their own forces. Every coalition casualty potentially became an enemy combatant, creating a nightmare scenario where retreat often proved as dangerous as advancing. Commander, Lieutenant Mora's voice crackled through Zara's communications implant. The young Turellian officer was stationed at the sensor array, one of the few pieces of equipment still functioning properly. I'm detecting massive movement from the Kethvar ground forces. It looks like they're preparing for a final assault. Through her binoculars, Zara could see the alien formations organizing themselves in the ruins of the lower city. The Kethvar were nightmarish creatures, standing nearly 3 meters tall on 6 powerful legs. Their elongated heads contained rows of razor-sharp teeth, and their forearms ended in claws capable of tearing through battle armor. But what made them truly terrifying was their intelligence. They weren't mindless beasts. but cunning strategists who had conquered dozens of worlds before setting their sights on Coalition space. The enemy force moving toward their position was enormous. Thousands of HFY warriors advanced in perfect coordination, their movements resembling a single organism rather than individual soldiers. Behind them came their war beasts, massive creatures that looked like crosses between spiders and tanks, bred specifically for siege warfare. "They're not leaving anything to chance," Zara muttered. She turned to address her remaining officers, who had gathered around her position. Their faces reflected the same grim understanding. This would likely be their final battle. Captain Jorik of the Vegan Marines spoke first, his gruff voice barely concealing his exhaustion. "My troops are down to their last magazines. We've been fighting on 3 hours of sleep for the past week, but they'll follow your orders, Commander, whatever they are." Dr. Senna, the Coalition's chief medical officer, looked up from treating a wounded soldier. Her green-scaled hands were stained with the blood of multiple species, evidence of the diverse Coalition forces that had fought and died on Nexus Prime. "The wounded need evacuation. But our transport ships were destroyed yesterday. Even if we could get them off planet, I don't know where we'd send them." The reality was stark. The HFY had systematically targeted Coalition supply lines and evacuation routes. This wasn't just a battle for territory. It was a war of extermination. The insectoid invaders had made it clear through their actions that they intended to consume or convert every living being in Coalition space. Major Korvex, representing what remained of the Centauri Defense Forces, studied his tactical display with the intensity of a scholar examining ancient texts. "I've run the calculations 17 different ways, Commander. Even if we fight with perfect coordination and every shot finds its target, we'll be overwhelmed within 4 hours. The numbers simply don't work in our favor." Zara appreciated his honesty, even if it wasn't what she wanted to hear. The Coalition had always prided itself on rational decision-making based on facts and analysis. But sometimes facts painted a picture that no rational being wanted to accept. The HFY bioships began descending toward the surface, their living hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that served as communication between vessels. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, like watching the coordinated movement of a school of predatory fish preparing to feed. "The civilian population?" Zara asked, though she dreaded the answer. Dr. Senna's expression grew even more grim. "The evacuation ships managed to get about 60% of them off-planet before the orbital blockade was established. The remaining civilians are in the underground shelters, but those were only designed to withstand conventional bombardment. If the HFY use their bioacids, the barriers won't hold for long." Tens of thousands of innocent beings huddled in shelters below their feet, counting on the Coalition forces to protect them. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on Zara like the gravity of a gas giant. These weren't just statistics or strategic objectives. They were families, children, elderly beings who had lived their entire lives believing that the Coalition would keep them safe. A new sound echoed across the battlefield, a deep, rhythmic pounding that seemed to come from the HFY formations themselves. It was their war call, a biological percussion that synchronized their forces and struck fear into their enemies. The sound grew louder as more creatures joined the chorus, creating a cacophony that made the ground itself vibrate. "They're trying to break our morale," Sergeant Vextar observed, checking his weapon for the 100th time. Standard HFY psychological warfare. But it was working. Zara could see the fear in her soldiers' eyes, hear the tremor in their voices when they spoke. These were veterans who had faced death countless times, but the HFY were unlike any enemy the Coalition had encountered. Their combination of advanced biotechnology and savage brutality challenged everything the civilized galaxy thought it knew about warfare. The Coalition had been built on principles of cooperation, scientific advancement, and peaceful coexistence. Member worlds shared technology, resources, and cultural achievements. The idea that such a civilization could be threatened by creatures that seemed to embody pure destructive instinct was almost incomprehensible. Yet here they were, facing extinction despite all their technological marvels and strategic brilliance. The HFY had adapted to every weapon the Coalition deployed, evolved countermeasures to every tactic their military commanders devised. It was as if the enemy possessed some fundamental advantage that conventional military thinking couldn't overcome. "Commander," Lieutenant Mora's voice crackled through the communications again. "I'm detecting some kind of energy buildup from the lead bioship. Massive power signature, unlike anything in our databases." Through her binoculars, Zara could see the largest HFY vessel pulsing with an eerie green light. The bioship was enormous, even by their standards. Easily twice the size of a coalition dreadnought, its surface writhed with what looked like living tissue, and massive tentacles extended from its lower sections like the roots of some cosmic tree. "That's new," Captain Jorik muttered. "In 6 months of fighting these things, I've never seen anything like that light show." "Doctor," Senna's scanner beeped with urgent readings. "Those energy levels suggest some kind of biological weapon, possibly something designed to affect planetary ecosystems directly. If they deploy it here, Nexus Prime could become uninhabitable for centuries." The implications were staggering. Nexus Prime wasn't just a military target. It was home to over 50 million beings and served as a hub for trade and diplomacy throughout Coalition space. Its destruction would represent not just a tactical loss, but a blow to the very heart of galactic civilization. Major Corvex looked up from his calculations with an expression of grim resignation. "I've analyzed the deployment patterns of their ground forces. They're not positioning for occupation. They're setting up for complete extermination. Whatever that bioship is preparing to do, they intend to sterilize the entire planet." The reality hit Zara like a physical blow. The HFY weren't just trying to defeat the coalition forces. They were preparing to commit genocide on a planetary scale. Every civilian in the shelters, every wounded soldier in the medical stations, every living thing on Nexus Prime was about to be systematically destroyed. She thought about her own family on Andoria Prime, probably watching the news feeds and hoping for word that their daughter was still alive. She thought about all the coalition worlds that depended on Nexus Prime for trade and protection. Most of all, she thought about the children in the shelters below, who would never grow up to see the stars their parents had shown them in picture books. "Sir," Sergeant Vextar said quietly, "whatever orders you give, we'll follow them. To the end." The other officers nodded in agreement. Despite the hopeless odds, despite the certain knowledge that they were about to die, these beings still looked to her for leadership. It was both humbling and terrifying to realize that she was about to lead them all into their final battle. The HFY war call reached a crescendo that shook dust from the ruined buildings around them. In the distance, the alien forces began their advance, moving with the inexorable momentum of a natural disaster. The bioship's green glow intensified, and Zara could feel an unnatural warmth in the air that suggested the weapon was nearly ready to fire. "All units," she spoke into her communications array, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "This is Commander Zara. Prepare for final defensive positions. We hold here, no matter what comes. For the Coalition, for our families, and for every innocent life counting on us." Across the battlefield, Coalition forces checked their weapons, said silent prayers to whatever deities their species revered, and prepared to face the end with courage. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy that seemed to embody the galaxy's worst nightmares. But they were still standing, still fighting, still hoping that somehow, impossibly, things might change. The HFY advance reached the outer perimeter of the Coalition's defensive zone. The first energy blasts began to fly as automated turrets engaged the enemy forces. The sound of battle erupted once again across Nexus Prime, but this time everyone knew it would be the last time. The green glow from the bioship had reached critical intensity, and massive tentacles were extending toward the planet's surface, like the fingers of death itself. As Zara raised her own weapon and took aim at the advancing horde, she allowed herself one final moment to imagine what the galaxy might have been like if this war had never started. Then she pushed those thoughts aside and focused on the task at hand, making the HFY pay dearly for every meter of ground they claimed. The final battle for Nexus Prime had begun, and defeat seemed as inevitable as the setting of the system's twin suns. But the Coalition forces would face it standing, weapons in hand, defending everything they held dear until their last breath. It was all they had left, and it would have to be enough. The first sign that something had changed wasn't visible. It was felt. A deep vibration thrummed through the ground beneath the coalition forces, different from the organic pulsing of Kethvar bioships. This vibration was mechanical, precise, and strangely familiar to those who had studied ancient galactic history. Lieutenant Mora's voice crackled with excitement and confusion as she monitored her sensor array. "Commander, I'm detecting massive spatial distortions in the outer system, multiple contacts dropping out of what appears to be faster than light travel. But the energy signatures don't match any known coalition or Kethvar technology." Commander Zara paused in her preparations for the final battle, a small flicker of hope daring to kindle in her chest. How many contacts? Difficult to determine with all the interference, but preliminary scans suggest at least 50 vessels. They're moving at incredible speed toward our position. Commander, some of these ships are enormous, larger than Kethvar bioships, but the construction appears to be entirely artificial. The news rippled through the coalition forces like electricity. After months of retreating, of watching their fleets scattered and their strongholds fall, the appearance of unknown ships sparked desperate curiosity. Were they reinforcements from some hidden coalition fleet, perhaps allies from beyond known space? Major Korvex studied his tactical display with renewed intensity. The approaching vessels are broadcasting on multiple frequencies, but they're using communication protocols that predate the current galactic standard by several centuries. It's almost as if what, Major? Zara demanded. As if they're using communication systems from the old archives, the kind of technology that was abandoned when the Coalition established unified standards 300 years ago. Dr. Senna looked up from treating a wounded Centauri soldier, her scaled features creased with puzzlement. That's impossible. No civilization has used those protocols in centuries. The only records of such technology exist in historical databases. The Kethvar had noticed the new arrivals as well. Their advance toward the coalition positions slowed, then stopped entirely as the alien forces began reorganizing their formations. The massive bioship's green glow flickered and shifted as its attention turned toward the approaching fleet. Even the enemy's war call diminished to an uncertain murmur. "The lead vessels are entering orbital range," Lieutenant Mora reported. "I'm getting clearer readings now. Commander, these ships are unlike anything in our databases. The hulls appear to be constructed from refined metals rather than organic material, and they're bristling with what look like energy weapons. But the design philosophy is completely foreign to Coalition shipbuilding." Through her enhanced binoculars, Zara could now see specks of light in the sky that hadn't been there moments before. The unknown fleet was taking up positions throughout Nexus Prime's orbital space, their movements suggesting coordinated military action rather than random exploration. Captain Jorix squinted at the sky, his weathered face showing the first sign of optimism in days. "Whoever they are, they're not running from the Kethvar. Look at their formation. They're positioning for a fight." The mysterious fleet's ships became visible as more than just points of light. They were massive constructions of metal and composites, their angular designs sharply contrasting with both the organic curves of Kethvar bioships and the elegant lines of Coalition vessels. They moved with purpose and precision, like components of a vast machine designed for warfare. Suddenly, the communications array crackled to life with an incoming transmission. The signal was powerful enough to override all other chatter, and the voice that emerged spoke in accented but recognizable galactic standard. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Expeditionary Force, flagship UES Indomitable, Coalition forces on Nexus Prime. Please respond. We are here to assist in your defense against the Kethvar incursion." Silence fell over the Coalition command post. Several officers exchanged glances of confusion and disbelief. Dr. Senna was the first to voice what many were thinking. Did that voice say human? That's impossible. Humans are a myth, a legend from the early colonial period. They disappeared from galactic affairs centuries ago. Major Korvex was rapidly accessing his historical databases. Not disappeared, Doctor. According to the archives, humans withdrew from galactic civilization approximately 400 standard years ago. They were one of the founding species of what eventually became the Coalition. But they left suddenly and completely. No one knows why. Commander Zara stared at the communications panel, her mind racing. Every coalition citizen learned about humans in their basic education. They were the mysterious precursor species that had supposedly helped establish many of the galaxy's trade routes and diplomatic protocols before vanishing. Without explanation, most modern scholars treated them as semi-mythological figures, like the ancient gods of primitive civilizations. "This is Commander Zara of the Coalition Defense Forces," she responded carefully. "Can you verify your identity?" "Human civilization has been absent from galactic affairs for centuries." The reply came immediately, tinged with what sounded like amusement. "Commander, we've been monitoring Coalition communications for some time. We're well aware that our absence has led to interesting interpretations of our fate. We didn't disappear, we simply chose a different path. But when we detected the Kethvar threat, we decided it was time to return." On her tactical display, Lieutenant Mora was tracking the fleet's movements with growing amazement. "Commander, their ships are deploying into attack formation around the Kethvar fleet. They're not requesting permission or waiting for authorization. They're just taking action." The first engagement began without warning or preamble. The human fleet opened fire simultaneously, and the effect was devastating. Brilliant beams of energy erupted from their vessels, striking the Kethvar bioships with unprecedented precision. Unlike coalition weapons, which the aliens had learned to deflect or absorb, the human energy beams carved through Kethvar hulls like superheated knives through flesh. The largest bioship, the one that had been preparing its planet-killing weapon, reeled under multiple direct hits. Its green glow faltered and flickered as massive sections of its living hull were vaporized. The creature's agonized shriek echoed across both orbital space and the planet's surface, a sound of pain and rage that made even the Kethvar ground forces pause in their advance. "Impossible," breathed Major Corvex. "Those bioships have withstood everything we've thrown at them for months. How are human weapons penetrating their defenses so easily?" Dr. Senna was studying her scanner readings with fascination. "The energy signatures are completely unlike anything in our databases. It's not plasma, not particle beams, not any form of energy weapon we understand. It's as if they've developed entirely different principles of physics." The human fleet moved with lethal grace through the orbital battlefield, their ships darting between Kethvar bioships, like predatory fish. Their weapons fired in perfect synchronization, targeting specific sections of enemy vessels with surgical precision. It wasn't just the power of their weapons that was impressive. It was their tactical coordination and apparent understanding of Kethvar vulnerabilities. Captain Jorik watched the orbital battle with the eye of a veteran soldier. "Look at their movement patterns. They're not fighting like they've just encountered the Kethvar for the first time. They know exactly where to hit those bioships for maximum damage. They've studied these creatures." The communications array crackled again as Admiral Chen's voice returned. "Commander Zara, we're detecting significant Kethvar ground forces advancing on your position. We're preparing to deploy ground support units to assist your defense. Please mark your positions clearly to avoid friendly fire incidents." "Deploy ground support?" Zara repeated in amazement. "How could they possibly deploy ground forces so quickly? They just arrived in-system minutes ago." Her question was answered by a series of brilliant flashes in the sky. Objects were separating from the human fleet, falling through Nexus Prime's atmosphere like metallic meteorites. As they descended, retro thrusters fired to slow their approach, revealing them to be drop pods designed for rapid deployment of ground forces. Lieutenant Mora's scanners were working overtime to track the incoming objects. "I count approximately 200 drop pods, landing in a coordinated pattern around our defensive perimeter. Commander, they're landing right in the middle of the Kethvar advance." The first pods impacted the battlefield with tremendous force, their reinforced hulls designed to withstand both atmospheric entry and enemy fire. Steam hissed as their emergency cooling systems engaged, and then the pods split open like mechanical flowers to disgorge their contents. What emerged defied everything the coalition forces thought they knew about human physiology and capabilities. The creatures, for lack of a better word, that stepped out of the pods were clearly humanoid in basic structure, but they had been enhanced far beyond baseline human parameters. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, their bodies encased in powered armor that seemed to blend seamlessly with their enhanced physiology. "Those aren't the humans from the historical archives, Doctor," Senna whispered in amazement. "According to our records, humans were approximately 2 meters tall and possessed no natural armor or enhanced capabilities. These beings appear to have undergone extensive genetic and cybernetic modification. The enhanced humans moved across the battlefield with incredible speed and coordination. Their weapons were unlike anything the Coalition had ever developed. Sleek, angular devices that fired various types of energy and projectile ammunition with devastating effect. But more impressive than their equipment was their apparent fearlessness in the face of Kethvar forces. Where Coalition soldiers had learned to fight defensively against the insectoid invaders, using cover and coordinated fire to slow their advance, the humans attacked. They charged directly into Kethvar formations, their enhanced strength allowing them to engage the aliens in close combat. It was a level of aggression that bordered on insanity. Except it was clearly working. Sergeant Vextar watched through his binoculars as a squad of human soldiers surrounded a group of Kethvar warriors. The aliens, each nearly 3 meters tall and armed with natural weapons that could tear through battle armor, found themselves outmatched by the enhanced human speed and coordination. The battle was brief and decisive. "They're not just fighting the Kethvar," Vextar observed with awe. "They're hunting them." The orbital battle was proceeding with equal efficiency. The human fleet had destroyed or disabled half the Kethvar bioships in less than 30 minutes of engagement. The massive vessel that had threatened to sterilize Nexus Prime was now a dying hulk, its bioluminescent patterns flickering weakly as secondary explosions rippled through its organic structure. Admiral Chen's voice returned to the communications array, this time addressing the entire Coalition force. "Coalition defenders. This is Admiral Chen. We have neutralized the immediate orbital threat and are establishing a protective perimeter around Nexus Prime. Our ground forces are engaging Kethvar positions throughout your defensive zone. Please maintain your current positions and provide target identification as needed." Commander Zara found herself speechless. In less than an hour, these mysterious human forces had accomplished what the Coalition military hadn't been able to do in months of fighting. They hadn't just stopped the Kethvar advance. They were systematically dismantling it. Captain Jorik was studying the battlefield through his own enhanced optics. "Commander, I've never seen anything like this. The humans aren't just winning. They're making it look easy. It's as if they possess some fundamental advantage over the Kethvar that we never understood." The sound of approaching footsteps made the Coalition officers turn toward their defensive perimeter. A squad of the enhanced human soldiers was approaching their position, moving with the confident stride of victorious warriors. Their leader, distinguishable by additional markings on his armor, raised a gauntleted hand in what was clearly intended as a peaceful gesture. "Coalition forces, I am Colonel Marcus Stone, commanding the 3rd Human Marine Division. We've secured this sector and are establishing a forward command post. Admiral Chen has requested permission to coordinate our operations with your remaining forces." Up close, the human soldier was even more impressive than he had appeared at a distance. His powered armor hummed with energy, and visible augmentations enhanced his natural capabilities to superhuman levels. But despite his intimidating appearance, his voice carried the tone of a professional soldier addressing respected allies. Commander Zara stepped forward, still struggling to process everything that had happened. "Colonel Stone, I am Commander Zara of the Coalition Defense Forces. We're grateful for your assistance. But I have to ask, where have humans been for the past 4 centuries? And how did you know to come here?" Colonel Stone's helmet retracted, revealing a face that was recognizably human but marked by the same enhancements that had modified his body. His eyes glowed with artificial enhancement, and neural interface ports were visible along his jawline. "Commander, that's a long and complicated story. The short version is that humanity chose to withdraw from galactic civilization to focus on our own development. We've spent the past 400 years advancing our technology and capabilities far beyond what we had achieved during our first period of galactic contact." "Doctor," Senna couldn't contain her scientific curiosity. "Your enhancements. Genetic modification? Cybernetic augmentation? The level of integration suggests technologies beyond our current understanding." "Both, and more," Colonel Stone replied. We discovered that organic and artificial systems could be merged in ways that created capabilities greater than the sum of their parts. Every human in our military has undergone extensive enhancement to optimize their performance in combat situations. Major Corvex consulted his tactical display, which now showed human forces systematically clearing Kethvar positions throughout the entire combat zone. Colonel, your coordination and tactical knowledge suggest you've fought the Kethvar before. This wasn't a rescue mission. This was a planned military operation. Colonel Stone nodded grimly. We've been monitoring the Kethvar expansion for several years. They represent an existential threat not just to the Coalition, but to all organic life in this galaxy. We couldn't allow them to establish a foothold in Coalition space because we knew it would be only a matter of time before they reached human space as well. The implications of his words hit the Coalition officers like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just happened to arrive at the right moment. They had been watching the war, analyzing the threat, and preparing their response. The rescue of Nexus Prime was part of a larger strategic plan. You've been watching us fight and die for months without intervening? Captain Jorik's voice carried an edge of accusation. Colonel Stone's expression remained calm but serious. Captain, I understand your anger. But the reality is that we needed to understand the full scope of the Kethvar threat before committing our forces. One tactical victory wouldn't be enough. We needed to know how to defeat them completely. Your resistance gave us time to prepare properly. Lieutenant Mora looked up from her sensor array with excitement in her voice. Colonel, I'm detecting significant Kethvar retreats throughout this system. Your forces have broken their orbital blockade, and their ground forces are withdrawing toward their remaining bioships. The truth was beginning to dawn on Commander Zara. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a demonstration. The humans had developed capabilities that gave them a decisive advantage over the Kethvar, and they were sharing that advantage with the Coalition. The question was, why they had waited so long to reveal themselves. What happens now? She asked Colonel Stone. Do you disappear again once the immediate threat is resolved? The Colonel's enhanced features showed something that might have been amusement. No, Commander. We're here to stay this time. The galaxy has changed, and humanity needs to be part of that change. We'll be working closely with the Coalition to eliminate the Kethvar threat permanently. As if to emphasize his point, a series of explosions lit up the sky as the last Kethvar bioships were systematically destroyed by the human fleet. The creatures that had seemed invincible just hours before were being reduced to debris by weapons and tactics they couldn't counter. For the first time in months, the sounds of battle were fading from Nexus Prime. In their place came the organized bustle of human forces establishing secure perimeters, treating wounded Coalition soldiers, and beginning the process of planetary recovery. The nightmare that had seemed destined to consume everything was ending with shocking suddenness. Commander Zara looked around at her surviving officers and soldiers, seeing hope returning to faces that had been marked by despair just hours earlier. The arrival of the humans had changed everything in ways she was only beginning to understand. The war was far from over, but for the first time since it began, victory seemed possible. The question that remained was, what price would come with this miraculous salvation, and what the galaxy would look like when humanity fully returned to galactic civilization after 4 centuries of mysterious absence. The human command ship, UES Indomitable, was unlike any vessel Commander Zara had ever set foot aboard. Where Coalition ships emphasized comfort and efficiency through elegant design, the human vessel projected raw power and functionality. Every surface, every corridor, every room seemed designed with a single purpose: warfare, on a scale that defied conventional understanding. Admiral Sarah Chen greeted the Coalition delegation in a briefing room that doubled as a tactical command center. Holographic displays showed real-time battle data from across 3 star systems, with human forces engaging Kethvar fleets in coordinated operations that spanned hundreds of light-years. The scope of the human military response was staggering. Commander Zara, welcome aboard, Admiral Chen said, her own enhancements visible in the neural interfaces that glowed softly along her temples. I apologize for the delay in arranging this meeting. but we've been coordinating simultaneous operations against HFY strongholds throughout this sector of the galaxy. Dr. Senna stared at the tactical displays with scientific fascination. Admiral, these operations suggest you have multiple fleets positioned across Coalition space. How is such coordination possible without our sensors detecting your presence? Admiral Chen smiled, the expression somehow both warm and predatory. Dr. Senna, humanity has spent 4 centuries developing technologies specifically designed to remain undetected by conventional sensors. We've been watching and learning from a distance because we needed to understand how the galaxy had evolved in our absence. Major Korvex studied the holographic battlefield displays with professional interest. The scale of your operations suggests a military force far larger than historical records indicate humanity possessed. According to our archives, human space encompassed perhaps 50 star systems at the time of your withdrawal. The archives are correct about our original territory, Admiral Chen confirmed, but they don't account for 400 years of expansion into regions beyond the galactic rim. Humanity has grown considerably during our period of isolation. The implications were staggering. While the Coalition had been developing trade networks and diplomatic protocols, humanity had been expanding into previously unknown regions of space, building a military-industrial complex capable of fielding fleets that dwarfed anything the known galaxy possessed. Commander Zara leaned forward, studying a tactical display that showed human forces systematically dismantling a HFY bioship construction facility. Admiral, your weapons appear to be specifically designed to counter HFY defenses. The Coalition has been developing new technologies for months, without achieving comparable effectiveness. That's because you've been approaching the problem incorrectly, Admiral Chen replied. She gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show a detailed analysis of HFY biological systems. The Coalition has been treating the HFY as just another enemy species with advanced technology, but they're not a technological civilization in any conventional sense. They're a biological weapon system that has achieved intelligence. Dr. Senna examined the biological data with growing amazement. These detailed scans of HFY physiology are far beyond anything our medical teams have been able to achieve. How did you acquire such comprehensive information? Admiral Chen's expression grew grim. Because we've fought them before, Doctor. The HFY didn't just appear in Coalition space. They've been expanding across the galaxy for decades. We encountered them approximately 30 years ago when they attempted to invade human territory. The revelation hit the Coalition delegation like a physical blow. Captain Jorik was the first to voice what they were all thinking. You've been fighting the HFY for 30 years? And you never warned the Coalition about the threat? We tried, Admiral Chen replied quietly. We sent automated warning buoys to Coalition space 17 years ago, detailing the HFY threat and offering our assistance. The Coalition Intelligence Service classified the warnings as elaborate hoaxes and destroyed the message drones without response. Major Korvex accessed his database with growing urgency. I have no record of any such warnings in the intelligence archives, because they were classified above your clearance level and subsequently buried by officials who refused to believe humanity still existed, Admiral Chen explained. The Coalition leadership preferred to maintain the fiction that humans were a historical curiosity, rather than acknowledge we might have evolved beyond their recognition. The tactical display shifted again, showing a comparison between Coalition and human military technologies. The differences were overwhelming. Where Coalition weapons relied on conventional energy projection and kinetic force, human systems integrated biological, quantum, and dimensional manipulation techniques that created effects bordering on the impossible. Your soldiers, Sergeant Vextar said, studying recordings of the recent battle. The enhancements they've undergone. They're not just technological improvements. They've become something beyond baseline human physiology. Admiral Chen nodded. Humanity learned early in our conflict with the HFY that conventional approaches to warfare were inadequate. The enemy adapts too quickly to standard tactics and weapons. We needed to evolve beyond their ability to counter us. She gestured, and the display showed detailed schematics of human enhancement procedures. The level of modification was staggering. Genetic restructuring, cybernetic integration, and biological augmentation that created beings only barely recognizable as human. Yet somehow, they had retained their humanity while transcending its limitations. Dr. Senna studied the enhancement data with a mixture of fascination and concern. The level of modification suggests your species has undergone directed evolution, but the psychological profiles indicate they've retained human, emotional, and ethical responses. How is such extensive modification possible without losing essential identity? Because we didn't abandon what made us human, we enhanced it, Admiral Chen explained. Our scientists discovered that human consciousness and creativity could be amplified rather than replaced. Our enhanced soldiers aren't less human. They're more human than baseline genetics would normally allow. The philosophical implications were staggering, but Commander Zara found herself focusing on more immediate concerns. Admiral, what exactly do you need from the Coalition to eliminate the Kethvar threat permanently? Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. Commander, the Kethvar aren't just invading Coalition space, they're preparing to reproduce. The bioships you've been fighting are actually mobile breeding facilities designed to establish permanent hives throughout the galaxy. If they succeed in establishing a single breeding colony, they'll be able to produce new swarms faster than any military force can destroy them. The holographic display showed intelligence data that made the Coalition delegation's blood run cold. Deep space surveillance revealed Kethvar bioships converging on specific star systems, carrying massive biological payloads that could transform entire worlds into breeding grounds. The scale of the threat was beyond anything they had imagined. Major Corvex calculated deployment times and force requirements with growing alarm. Even with human assistance, the number of breeding sites they're attempting to establish suggests we can't intercept them all simultaneously. Some of these colonies will become operational, which is why we need to attack their source, Admiral Chen replied. The display shifted to show a region of space beyond the galactic rim, where long-range sensors had detected massive Kethvar fleet concentrations. We've located their primary breeding world, the origin point for all Kethvar expansion in this galaxy. If we can destroy that facility, we can stop their reproduction cycle entirely. Captain Jorek studied the intelligence data with the eye of a veteran tactician. The defenses around their primary facility appear to be extensive. Hundreds of bioships, planetary defense systems, and what looks like space-based breeding facilities. This would require a massive coordinated assault. Exactly, Admiral Chen confirmed. We have the technology and the enhanced forces necessary to penetrate their defenses. But we need Coalition resources and fleet support to maintain a sustained offensive. This operation will require every warship and every trained soldier both our civilizations can muster. Dr. Senna examined biological data from the proposed target. The planetary ecosystem appears to have been completely converted to support Kethvar reproduction. If these readings are accurate, the entire world has become a living factory for producing invasion forces. The scope of what they were contemplating began to sink in for the Coalition delegation. This wouldn't be a single battle or even a series of raids. It would be a full-scale assault on the enemy's primary stronghold, with the survival of galactic civilization hanging in the balance. What about Coalition worlds that are already under attack? Commander Zara asked. While we're mounting this offensive against their breeding world, Kethvar forces will continue advancing throughout Coalition space. Admiral Chen's smile was coldly confident. We've already deployed rapid response fleets to 18 systems under immediate threat. Our enhanced forces are systematically destroying Kethvar positions throughout Coalition space, while we prepare for the primary assault. The tactical displays confirmed her statement, showing human fleets engaging enemy forces across multiple star systems with overwhelming success. The technological advantages that had turned the tide at Nexus Prime were being applied on a galactic scale, breaking the Kethvar offensive before it could achieve critical momentum. Sergeant Vex Tar watched recordings of human forces in action with professional admiration. Your soldiers don't just fight differently, they think differently. They're adapting to Kethvar tactics faster than the enemy can respond to their adaptations. Enhanced cognitive processing, Admiral Chen explained. Our modifications don't just improve physical capabilities. They accelerate learning, pattern recognition, and tactical analysis. A human soldier can observe enemy behavior, develop countermeasures, and implement new strategies in real time during combat. The implications for military doctrine were revolutionary. Coalition forces had relied on careful planning, extensive preparation, and coordinated execution of predetermined strategies. Human forces appeared capable of improvising and adapting continuously throughout an engagement, creating tactical situations the enemy couldn't predict or counter. Commander Zara found herself grappling with questions that went far beyond military strategy. Admiral, after this war ends, what happens to the galaxy? Humanity clearly possesses technologies and capabilities that make all other civilizations obsolete. Are we looking at a return to human dominance? Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly. Commander, dominance was never our goal. We withdrew from galactic civilization because we saw where the emphasis on political unity and technological standardization was leading. We chose evolution over stagnation. But that doesn't mean we intend to rule over others. The tactical display shifted to show post-war reconstruction scenarios, with human and coalition forces working together to rebuild damaged worlds and establish new defensive networks. The projected cooperation looked genuine, but the power differential between the civilizations was undeniable. Dr. Senna studied the enhancement data with growing concern. The level of modification your people have undergone represents a fundamental change in the nature of consciousness itself. How do we know you still share the same basic values and ethical frameworks as baseline humans? Because we chose which values to enhance and which limitations to transcend, Admiral Chen replied. Human creativity, curiosity, and compassion have been amplified along with our physical and mental capabilities. We became more human, quote, not less. Major Corvex calculated fleet deployment requirements for the proposed assault on the Kethvar breeding world. The operation you're describing would require every available coalition warship and support vessel. We'd be committing our entire remaining military to a single offensive operation in uncharted space. And if we fail, Captain Jorik added grimly, the coalition would have no remaining defenses against Kethvar expansion. Admiral Chen nodded gravely. That's correct. This operation represents an all-or-nothing commitment from both our civilizations. But the alternative is fighting a defensive war against an enemy that can reproduce faster than we can destroy them. Eventually, they would overwhelm us through sheer numbers. The weight of the decision they were contemplating pressed down on the coalition delegation like the gravity of a neutron star. They were being asked to stake the survival of their entire civilization on the capabilities of allies who had been absent for centuries and whose motivations remained partially mysterious. Commander Zara looked around the briefing room, taking in the displays showing human forces systematically dismantling Kethvar positions throughout coalition space. The evidence of human capabilities was overwhelming, but trust had to be built on more than just military effectiveness. Admiral, she said finally, before the coalition can commit to this operation, we need to understand humanity's long-term intentions. Your people have clearly evolved beyond anything we understood about your species. What guarantees can you provide that this alliance will benefit all galactic civilizations? Admiral Chen stood and walked to a viewport that showed the stars beyond the ship's hull. Commander, 400 years ago, humanity made the choice to withdraw rather than impose our will on the galaxy. We could have dominated galactic civilization even then. But we chose isolation instead. Now we're offering partnership in facing a threat that endangers us all. The sincerity in her voice was evident, but Commander Zara understood that trust between civilizations couldn't be established through words alone. The coming assault on the Kethvar breeding world would test not just their combined military capabilities, but the foundation of their alliance. What's the timeline for this operation? She asked. Coalition fleet elements must be assembled and prepared for departure within 10 standard days, Admiral Chen replied. The Kethvar are accelerating their breeding cycle in response to our interference. If we don't strike soon, they'll have produced enough new forces to make the operation impossible. 10 days to prepare for an assault that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. As the coalition delegation prepared to return to Nexus Prime with their recommendations, Commander Zara realized they were about to participate in the most important decision in the history of their species. The humans had demonstrated they possessed the power to change everything. The question that remained was whether they would use that power to save the galaxy or reshape it according to their own vision. The combined fleet that assembled at the edge of known space was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Coalition vessels from dozens of worlds flew in formation alongside human warships, whose designs seemed to blur the line between technology and art. The sight would have been magnificent under different circumstances. But every being aboard those ships understood they were heading into a battle that would determine the survival of galactic civilization. Commander Zara stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching the final preparations for what Admiral Chen had designated Operation Extinction. The name was grimly appropriate. Either they would drive the Kethvar species to extinction, or face extinction themselves. There was no middle ground in this conflict. The journey to the Kethvar breeding world had taken 12 days through uncharted space, following navigation data that human deep-range scouts had died to obtain. The fleet now hovered at the edge of a star system that defied conventional understanding of planetary development. The primary world had been completely transformed into a living factory, dedicated to producing Kethvar invasion forces. Dr. Senna monitored her scanners with fascination and horror. The biological readings from the planet's surface are staggering. The entire ecosystem has been converted into specialized breeding chambers. According to these scans, they're producing new bioships at a rate of approximately 1 per day. Major Korvex studied the defensive formations surrounding the breeding world. Over 300 Kethvar bioships in defensive positions, plus what appears to be planetary defense systems grown directly from the world's surface. Even with our combined fleet, penetrating these defenses will require significant casualties. Admiral Chen reviewed the final attack plans with the same calm intensity she had displayed throughout their alliance. The operation will proceed in 3 phases. Phase 1. Human stealth units will infiltrate the planetary defense network and disable their primary coordination systems. Phase 2. The combined fleet will engage orbital defenses while landing forces assault the breeding facilities. Phase 3. Deployment of the Extinction Protocol to ensure the breeding world cannot be rebuilt. The term Extinction Protocol was new to the Coalition delegation, and Captain Jorik was the first to voice their concerns. Admiral, what exactly does this protocol entail? Are we discussing the destruction of the entire planetary ecosystem? Admiral Chen's expression grew grim. Captain, the Kethvar breeding world is no longer a natural ecosystem. It's been completely converted into a biological weapon factory. The Extinction Protocol involves deploying quantum charges that will disrupt the fundamental biological processes that maintain the planet's artificial life support systems. Commander Zara felt a chill at the implications. You're talking about rendering an entire world permanently uninhabitable. That's planetary sterilization on a scale that violates every coalition treaty regarding warfare. Commander, this world ceased to be a natural environment decades ago. Dr. Senna observed, studying her biological scans. According to these readings, every life form on the planet has been genetically modified to support Kethvar reproduction. There are no indigenous species remaining to protect. The moral implications of their mission weighed heavily on the coalition forces. But the tactical situation left no alternatives. Intelligence data confirmed that the breeding world was producing invasion fleets at an accelerating pace. Every day they delayed meant dozens of new bioships that would eventually threaten coalition worlds. Lieutenant Mora monitored communications from the human stealth units that had already begun their infiltration mission. Phase 1 teams report successful penetration of the outer defense grid. They're encountering resistance from biological security systems we haven't seen before. The tactical displays showed ghostly signatures moving through the Kethvar defensive network. Human stealth technology was apparently advanced enough to remain nearly invisible to enemy sensors, but the infiltration teams were still facing significant challenges from the alien security systems. Colonel Stone's voice crackled over the communications array from his assault ship. Admiral, my teams are encountering adaptive biological defenses that appear to be learning from each contact. The Kethvar have created security systems that evolve their responses in real time. This was a complication no one had anticipated. The Kethvar breeding world wasn't just a production facility. It was a living laboratory where the enemy tested and refined their biological technologies. Every system they encountered was designed to adapt and improve based on the threats it faced. Admiral Chen responded with characteristic decisiveness. Colonel, accelerate your timeline. We need those coordination systems disabled before they can fully adapt to our infiltration techniques. All fleet units, prepare for immediate advancement to Phase 2. The combined fleet began its advance toward the HFY defensive positions, coalition vessels deployed into attack formations they had practiced for months, while human ships moved with fluid precision that suggested capabilities far beyond conventional maneuvering systems. The contrast between the two technologies was striking, but both were united in their determination to end the HFY threat permanently. The first engagement began when long-range HFY bioweapons opened fire on the advancing fleet. Organic projectiles the size of shuttlecraft erupted from the enemy vessels, seeking their targets with predatory intelligence. Coalition ships responded with concentrated plasma fire, while human vessels deployed defensive systems that seemed to bend space itself around their hulls. Major Corvex watched the battle unfold with professional amazement. The human defensive technology is remarkable. Their ships appear to be redirecting enemy fire through some form of spatial manipulation, rather than absorbing or deflecting it. Dr. Senna's scanners were recording everything for later analysis. The energy requirements for such technology should be enormous, but their ships show no signs of power strain. They've achieved capabilities that our physicists would consider impossible. The battle intensified as more HFY bioships joined the engagement. The enemy vessels fought with desperate fury, understanding that the destruction of their breeding world would represent an existential threat to their species. Their tactics became increasingly aggressive, with some bioships attempting ramming attacks against human vessels, but the human fleet responded to each escalation with new capabilities that the HFY couldn't counter. Ships that had been firing energy weapons suddenly deployed kinetic projectiles that seemed to phase through enemy defenses. Vessels that had been fighting individually began coordinating their attacks through some form of quantum entanglement that allowed instantaneous communication across the battlefield. Commander Zara realized she was witnessing the culmination of 4 centuries of human technological development. Every system, every weapon, every tactical doctrine had been refined specifically to counter threats like the HFY. The enemy had encountered an opponent that had evolved specifically to defeat them. Phase 1 complete, Colonel Stone reported. Planetary coordination systems are disabled. The HFY defensive network is operating on local control only. The effect was immediately visible as the enemy formations began to lose their precise coordination. Individual bioships continued to fight with desperate effectiveness, but the seamless integration that had made them so dangerous was broken. Admiral Chen gave the order for Phase 2. All assault units, commence landing operations. Target priorities are the primary breeding chambers and the genetic modification laboratories. Nothing on that planet can be allowed to survive. The assault on the breeding world began with a bombardment that defied conventional understanding of orbital warfare. Human ships fired projectiles that penetrated deep into the planet's crust before detonating, creating seismic disruptions that collapsed entire underground facility complexes. Coalition vessels provided covering fire and close support as landing forces deployed toward the surface. The planet itself seemed to fight back against the invasion. Defensive systems grown directly from the modified ecosystem launched biological projectiles at the descending assault craft, while mobile creatures the size of buildings emerged from underground chambers to engage the landing forces directly. But the combined assault forces were prepared for biological warfare on this scale. Coalition troops deployed chemical weapons designed to disrupt HFY nervous systems, while human soldiers used their enhanced capabilities to engage the planet's defenders in close combat. The battle became a 3-dimensional conflict fought simultaneously in orbit, on the surface, and within the vast underground breeding complexes. Dr. Senna monitored biological readings from the planetary surface with growing amazement. The entire planetary ecosystem is fighting as a single organism. The breeding facilities aren't just connected physically. They're sharing information and coordinating responses through some form of biological network. This revelation explained the HFY's rapid adaptation to new threats. Their breeding world wasn't just producing invasion forces, it was a planetary-scale intelligence that learned from every encounter and shared that knowledge throughout their species. The assault forces encountered resistance that grew more sophisticated with each passing hour. Biological defenders began using tactics specifically designed to counter coalition weapons and human enhancements. The planet was literally evolving new defensive strategies in real time. Admiral Colonel Stone reported from the surface. We're encountering biological systems that are adapting to our weapons faster than we can deploy countermeasures. The planet appears to be learning from every engagement. Admiral Chen had anticipated this possibility. Colonel, implement the extinction protocol immediately. We cannot allow this organism to continue its adaptive cycle. The extinction protocol involved deploying quantum charges at specific points throughout the planet's biological network. The charges weren't designed to destroy through explosive force, but to disrupt the fundamental quantum processes that maintain the planet's artificial ecosystem. It was a form of warfare that attacked the very structure of reality itself. As the quantum charges detonated, the effect was unlike anything the coalition forces had ever witnessed. The planet's biological network began to collapse not through destruction, but through the breakdown of the physical laws that sustained it. Breeding chambers that had operated for decades suddenly found their biological processes impossible to maintain. The HFY bioships in orbit began to show signs of distress as their connection to the planetary intelligence was severed. Many of the vessels appeared to lose coordination entirely, drifting aimlessly as their biological control systems failed. Others launched desperate attacks against the combined fleet, but without their previous tactical coordination, they were easily destroyed. Commander Zara watched the tactical displays show the systematic collapse of HFY resistance throughout the system. Admiral, the quantum disruption appears to be affecting HFY biology throughout the system. Their bioships are losing cohesion. The extinction protocol doesn't just destroy the breeding facilities, Admiral Chen explained. It disrupts the quantum field that maintains HFY biological integrity across interstellar distances. Every HFY organism connected to this planetary network will begin to experience biological breakdown. The implications were staggering. The breeding world hadn't just been producing invasion forces. It had been maintaining the biological integrity of the entire HFY species across the galaxy. Its destruction would cause the collapse of their civilization throughout known space. Dr. Senna monitored the quantum disruption field as it spread throughout the system. The field effect is propagating faster than light through what appears to be a quantum entanglement network. This suggests the HFY have been using quantum biology to maintain species cohesion across galactic distances. The battle for the breeding world continued for several more hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. With their planetary intelligence destroyed and their biological integrity failing, the HFY forces collapsed into disorganized resistance that was quickly eliminated by the superior firepower of the combined fleet. As the last enemy bioship was destroyed, a strange silence fell over the star system. The planet that had been a living factory of biological warfare was now a dead world, its surface scarred by the quantum disruption that had ended its artificial existence. The extinction protocol had succeeded beyond their most optimistic projections. Admiral Chen addressed the combined fleet as they prepared for the return journey to Coalition space. All units, this is Admiral Chen. Operation Extinction has achieved complete success. The HFY breeding network has been permanently destroyed. Intelligence reports confirm the collapse of HFY forces throughout Coalition space as the quantum disruption propagates through their biological network. The victory was total, but Commander Zara found herself contemplating the implications of what they had witnessed. Humanity possessed technologies that could manipulate the fundamental structure of reality itself. The quantum weapons that had ended the HFY threat represented a level of advancement that made all other civilizations obsolete. During the return journey, she met privately with Admiral Chen to discuss the future of galactic civilization. Admiral, the technologies you've demonstrated during this campaign represent a complete paradigm shift in the balance of power. How do we ensure that humanity's return doesn't result in the subjugation of other species? Admiral Chen considered the question carefully. Commander, 400 years ago, humanity chose withdrawal over domination because we understood that true advancement comes through diversity and cooperation, not through conquest. Our evolution hasn't changed that fundamental principle. The evidence supported her statement. Throughout the campaign, human forces had worked alongside coalition units, as equals rather than superiors. Their technological advantages had been shared freely to achieve common objectives, with no apparent effort to establish dominance over their allies. But the power differential is undeniable, Commander Zara observed. Your people have capabilities that make conventional warfare obsolete. How do other civilizations maintain their independence when faced with such overwhelming technological superiority? By recognizing that technological advancement isn't the only form of progress, Admiral Chen replied. Humanity chose to focus on military and scientific evolution during our isolation, but other civilizations developed different strengths. The coalition's diplomatic and cultural achievements represent advances that we never attempted. The conversation continued throughout the journey back to coalition space, laying the groundwork for a new era of galactic cooperation. Reports from across coalition territory confirmed the complete collapse of Kethvar forces as the quantum disruption eliminated their biological network. The threat that had seemed existential just weeks earlier had been permanently ended, but the victory had come at a cost that would reshape galactic civilization forever. Humanity's return brought technologies and capabilities that challenged every assumption about the limits of scientific advancement. The galaxy would have to adapt to a new reality where the impossible had become routine. As the combined fleet entered coalition space, they found a galaxy transformed. Worlds that had been under siege were now free, their populations emerging from shelters to rebuild their lives. The Kethvar bioships that had threatened entire star systems were now nothing more than drifting hulks, their biological systems no longer capable of sustaining life. Commander Zara stood on the bridge of her own ship, having transferred back to Coalition Command for the final approach to Nexus Prime. The planet that had nearly fallen to alien invasion was now bustling with reconstruction efforts, its people working alongside human engineers to rebuild what had been destroyed. The sight filled her with hope for the future, but also with questions about humanity's role in that future. The species that had once withdrawn from galactic civilization to avoid imposing their will had returned with the power to reshape reality itself. Whether they would use that power wisely remained to be seen. What was certain was that the galaxy would never be the same. The arrival of enhanced humanity had changed everything, proving that when defeat seemed inevitable, the right allies could turn the tide of history itself. The Kethvar had been defeated not just through superior firepower, but through the return of a species that had spent 4 centuries preparing for exactly this moment. The war was over, but the real challenge was just beginning. Building a future where enhanced humans and baseline galactic civilizations could coexist and thrive together. The fate of the galaxy now depended not on military might, but on wisdom, cooperation, and the willingness to embrace a future that none of them could have imagined just months before.